Syria is in chaos. Tactically, geopolitically, socially, and economically. In this quick assessment, we take a look at what's happened, what it means, and assess what comes next. The conflict in Syria began in 2011 as part of the Arab Spring and has ebbed and flowed since. Syria sits at the crossroads of geopolitical forces that dwarf the local and national influences, drivers, and actors. To demonstrate, let's look at the territory and influences involved. In the period 2016 to November 2024, Syrian territory was variously controlled by a number of groups with widely variable interests, aims, and sponsors. The Ba'ath regime controlled the majority of the country, essentially the southwest, including the borders with Israel and Lebanon. This provided some level of geopolitical stability with those countries and allowed Assad to provide Russia with air and maritime bases, supporting its need for military and diplomatic influence in the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean. Russian forces were supporting the Ba'ath regime with military action in recent days, in a failed effort to disrupt the HTS advance on Damascus. The Ba'ath regime in Damascus also hosts Iranian-backed Hezbollah and other groups, including members of the Iranian IRGC. Iranian-sponsored Iraqi militant groups have entered Syria this month in support of Assad. We all know by now that HTS took advantage of the fragility of Syrian regime military forces and strategic weakness of Russian and Iranian allies to break out of its stronghold in northwest Syria and topple the regime. While officially denied, we assess the HTS is directly supported by Turkey with intelligence and other support. HTS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, and although it has sought to distance itself from those death cults, it still remains grounded in fundamentalist Islamic ideology. These are not nice, liberal democratic people, but Turkey has long sought to combat the Assad regime in Damascus. To everyone's surprise, probably even HTS's surprise, its advance was successful, and it rolled into Damascus on December 8th. Islamic State itself still exists in a small number of enclaves within Syria, and the potential for IS to rebuild and re-emerge as a threat led the U.S. to retain a presence in Syria. The U.S. administration of Donald Trump withdrew from northern Syria in 2019, simultaneously withdrawing support for the Kurdish forces, the YPG, opening the door for the NATO-allied Turkish military to attack them. Turkey considers the YPG terrorists, but U.S. forces, almost 1,000 personnel, remained in eastern Syria supporting the Syrian Democratic Forces, a coalition of groups, but led by the Kurdish YPG. The U.S.-backed SDF still retains control of much of the northeast of Syria. The U.S. and SDF have spent the last 5 years targeting remnants of IS. But the relationship has probably been transactional since 2019, lacking depth, and the SDF has reportedly recently been seeking accommodation with the Assad regime and Russian forces, no doubt contrary to U.S. intent for Syria. The SDF, with its Kurdish leadership, no doubt recalls all too well Donald Trump abandoning it to Turkey's assault last time he was in power. There is likely a trust deficit remaining, and Trump's return to the White House next month probably won't improve the level of trust between the U.S. and SDF. The fragility of the Assad regime, especially its military, has been demonstrated by the successful HTS advance on Aleppo, Homs, and Damascus. The failure of the regime to resist the HTS advance is probably due to a hollowness previously masked by support from Russian military and Wagner Group forces, around 6,000 personnel, IRGC leadership and resources, and Hezbollah operational forces numbering in the thousands of fighters. Russian military in Syria has downsized in recent years, drawn into fighting in Ukraine. Numbers may have dropped to less than 1,000. Wagner's fighting power in Syria is difficult to assess, but is probably vastly reduced from its peak and may not be a factor at all. Russian and Iranian forces in Syria, including a destabilized Hezbollah, have been shown to be fragile, lacking in morale, operationally lacking in blocking/shaping, disruption, or even retrograde defense maneuver. The inability of Hezbollah to resist the HTS advance is a clear indication of its degradation by Israeli operations. Hezbollah will probably seek to reorganize in southern Lebanon, and its influence in Syria will probably fall to negligible levels for years. HTS almost certainly does not have the capacity to govern the whole of the territory it has theoretically captured, and will probably attempt to maintain much of the Ba'ath administration. The SDF probably sees HTS as a Turkish proxy and the HTS success in southern Syria as a threat to its long-term security. However, the SDF probably assesses HTS as militarily weak and not likely to attempt any military advance into SDF territory. However, the SDF probably assesses that a second Trump administration would seek to disrupt Iranian influence within Syria borders by supporting HTS in its clearance of southern Syria. Our assessment is that the Trump administration would seek concessions from NATO ally Turkey for U.S. acquiescence to HTS operations to eliminate IRGC and Hezbollah presence in Syria. It's unlikely Trump would withdraw U.S. special forces from SDF territory in the east. But Trump may actively attempt to dissuade the SDF from seizing the opportunity to engage with HTS. Iran almost certainly feels threatened by its collapsing sphere of influence. Hezbollah has been severely weakened as a fighting force. The IRGC has lost a key strategic partner in southern Syria. Iran itself has had its military capabilities attrited by recent Israeli attacks, which more than anything else demonstrated the potential for further losses should substantial direct conflict occur. Iran is now facing a fundamentalist Sunni regime from Turkey, through western Syria and northwest Iraq and down to Egypt. Iran sees a weakened Shia power base in Lebanon and Russian power retreating. Russian forces are being withdrawn from its Syrian bases. All this because the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hamas decided to prevent a normalized relationship between Israel and Sunni Saudi Arabia by slaughtering innocent Jewish civilians in the most heinous and barbaric way. Iran is probably asking itself if it was worth it. Finally, Assad regime-controlled chemical weapons and missiles could fall into the hands of various terrorist groups or undesirable local actors. Iran could react in unpredictable ways, desperate to re-establish a strategic buffer between itself and Sunni groups, Turkey and Israel. One possible outcome of recent events is an Iranian operation to attack SDF within northeast Syria, using Hezbollah and, more likely, Iraq-based militia and possibly even IRGC forces. Iran may see an opportunity to re-establish a buffer in the north, with the SDF threatened by HTS and Turkish military operations, and with the enhanced likelihood that a U.S. led by Donald Trump would not support the SDF as fully as other U.S. administrations have. Syria is a mess. It's a mesh of overlapping geopolitical will. The security situation there is uncertain, unpredictable, and has real implications for regional and global security. And don't forget, people still have to live there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and comment below. We really do read everything. And please consider subscribing. See you next time.